Ah, the Grasslands. A vast stretch of veritable land home to tribes and clans of various cultures, nestled within the crook of a ring of mountains and bordered by the sea. The land is hospitable to locals, and accessible only to those brave enough to weather harsh conditions to get there. These sacred lands, blessed by the spirits of the earth and littered with ancient Sindar ruins, is a treasure trove for those seeking adventure. Even more so in recent times, with rumour mills spreading the notion of the return of the Firebringer, a collective group of brave souls who once held off the invasion of Harmonia through the leadership of the Flame Champion and the destructive power of the True Fire Rune. The recent gossip bodes ill for the natives, as factions set to gather and once more fan the flames of war. Suikoden III, developed and published by Konami in NTSC territories in 2002, is the third game in the beloved Suikoden series. Set some 15 years after the events of the previous title, the game promises yet another adventure, though this time rendered in 3D and told through the lens of multiple protagonists. Penned by Yoshitaka Murayama, who you may know as the creator of Eiyuden Chronicles, Suikoden III represents his final project before he decided to leave Konami to embark on his own journey, opening Blue Moon Studios and eventually founding Rabbit and Bear Studios. We are placed into the shoes of three different protagonists and experience the events of the game through their perspectives played out in segments, much like the unfolding of a fantasy novel that neatly comes together in the final chapters. The Trinity Site System, a rotating circular pedestal housing flames as representation of each character, is the mechanism by which we can experience each viewpoint. When the game first came out, this was divisive amidst the Suikoden fan community. However, I found it enjoyable and felt that it gave secondary characters more of an opportunity to shine, as you have preset parties for each protagonist, and less chance to choose which members make up your combat parties. Seeing one group approach an event with the influence of their own cultural sensibilities, and then another group tackling the same event with consideration to their own motivations, was refreshing. It gives a ring of truth to the saying that there are two sides to every story, though in this case, it's three. Anytime I replayed a section, I was never bored, and there was always something new introduced that added insight into why events unfolded the way that they did, and who ultimately orchestrated them. The way in which each narrative thread was woven, with each flame of the Trinity Site forming together to weave a tapestry that told the whole story, was well executed. The antagonist had motivations beyond just wanting to destroy everything, with a hint of optimistic nihilism through the pretense of saving humanity by making a considered choice, rather than letting destiny play out its path, and I don't think I've really seen this particular scenario played out in this fashion in any other game. However, whilst the narrative is presented in a unique and enticing way, the same cannot be said for the localization of the narrative, nor the placement of story beats. Characters sometimes speak in a way that doesn't present naturally, and this sometimes causes scenes to lose their focus or impact. Additionally, there are occasions where you are placed into a character without any context, and are just expected to run around until you trigger an event, which is just egregious. A prime example of this is when you first start Geddoe Chapter 2, and without any exposition, are expected to figure out what it is that you need to do to progress the story. It would have been nice if Geddoe had an inner monologue to the effect of, "I need to pay a visit to the rumor monger," rather than making the player figure it out for themselves. On the topic of the characters, I suppose I should introduce them before we go any further. How rude of me. First, we have Geddoe, a mercenary and captain of the Harmonian 12th Unit of the Southern Frontier Defense Force, based in Karaya. He enters the Grasslands upon rumour of the Firebringer returning, a faction of the Grasslands that had warred with Harmonia in the past, before the True Fire Rune destroyed soldiers from both sides in a cataclysmic event. His stoicism belies the secrets of his past, and a burden that he has been forced to bear. Then there's Chris Lightfellow, the captain of the Zexen Knights, a group of 6 highly distinguished individuals who have proven themselves in battle. Whilst her prowess is uncontested, she is often looked down upon and treated differently because she is a woman, and is constantly plagued by doubt due to the death of her father when she was a child. Finally, we have Hugo, the son of Lucia, the chief of the Karaya Clan, one of the stronger and more warlike clans of the Grasslands. He is sent on a missive to deliver a letter of truce to Zexen amidst recent skirmishes between the two factions. He is naive and optimistic, and his youth bleeds heavily into his inexperience with acts of diplomacy, though a tragic event soon hardens his soul. Together the three will fight alongside and against each other as a mysterious figure sets to run the verdant lands red with blood and return everything to nothing. Travel in Suikoden III is done either on foot or on horseback, and occasionally on a creature native to the Grasslands that looks a bit like a cross between a deer, a greyhound, and a rhinoceros. We are presented with a map and points of interest that are connected by lines that serve to represent passages of conduct between each point. Of particular annoyance is that the game expects you to do a lot of backtracking between locations, and rather than some other games that may allow you to bypass a local that you have already traversed, Suikoden III forces the player to walk the path of each location you have visited to get to your destination. So strap on your pedometer and count those steps, as you'll be experiencing the same landscapes over and over again, and it does get old and frustrating as you're forced to move through battles in addition to this, all whilst there is no traditional treasure to collect. Whilst you can find plants that impart herbs, and dead bodies that can relinquish equipment and recipes, and these both replenish, the prize is never worth the amount of effort of purposely going out of your way to go and get them on repeat visits. As you're walking through familiar terrain for the 50th time, you'll be so used to being drawn into a random encounter that you won't even bat an eyelid. Suikoden III places your party of 6 into a battle formation in 3 pairs, where units grouped together will share the same turn. Effectively, this means that you will have 3 action inputs each round. Characters can attack, use a rune, defend, or use an item. You can also command the party to attempt to escape or let the enemy go if they are a significant lower level. Magic can take time to cast, and some elements have friendly fire to them, making battles have more of an edge of strategy to them, as placement is important. In saying this though, you never have direct control over where your characters stand, which I felt was a bit of a missed opportunity, as this could have added another layer of depth to the combat. Enemies scale with your party, so where Hugo may face darling bunnies with makeshift harmless axes, in the same location Chris will be facing killer ostriches with kicks that can send your smile flying. I didn't enjoy this so much when having to backtrack, but I feel I have harped on about that enough. Sometimes a character may be extremely stubborn and want to fight a battle alone. When this occurs, it's a one-on-one duel of reading the opponent's words to determine what they are going to do next. In a vein similar to rock, paper, scissors, you will need to choose whichever action you feel matches the dialogue in opposition. For example, defending against a death blow so that your character counters, rather than getting smacked in the face. These are very few and far between, and more served as a dessert to the story beats, the icing to complement the cake of the story. There are also war battles which pit your allies against an encroaching army. These skirmishes are in the form of a strategy RPG, where you move your units across predetermined nodes on a painted map, and each unit contains 4 characters whom you do not have direct control over within combat. Some individual soldiers impart support abilities that make movement within your units easier, whilst others may have healing or offensive abilities that can turn the tide of battle. The lack of control within combat means that you need to make sure that you're well prepared for whatever is to come, not only by equipping the correct skills and runes, but also by making sure you have the best equipment and a sharpened weapon, as these battles can be tough. Your party can be outfitted with defensive and support equipment brought from shops or from the aforementioned shrubs and dead adventurers that you find littered across the Grasslands. Many of the settlements that you visit will have a variety of stores from which you can purchase items that are exclusive to that region, and some even have rare finds that cannot be bought anywhere else. Be mindful though that your party can only carry a maximum of around 30 items, and each character has their own inventory of 3 equipped items in addition to standard equipment, so you will be finding that your inventory fills up quite quickly. This is circumvented by a vault that each character has access to, but even so, I found that I would often have to discard items in my inventory in favour of new ones collected along the way. Whenever you visit a store, that store's default inventory becomes available at your headquarters, so even if you don't plan to purchase anything, it's worth visiting every shop to take stock of their inventory. And this leads me to Budahak Castle, which is deeded to Thomas, a 4th character that you may play as. His chapters are centered around setting up a free trade zone between the Grasslanders and those from Zexen, and it's his mission to allow anyone to open a store and collaborate toward this goal, as long as they pay the rent. I like the setup for Thomas's chapters, and that they built into why the warring 3 parties ended up collectively at the base. Whilst narratively, Budahak is the best developed of all the bases in the series, it's probably the worst developed physically, as the foundational structure and walls do not change appearance like other iterations do. It would have been nice if the walls in the main building were repaired, as not doing so represents a security risk, and someone could catch a cold. When running around the headquarters, there are a variety of activities to take part in, such as racing horses, playing card games, reading books, and changing your party members, to name a few. The other complaint that I have is that the facilities are a bit too far spread out. So if, for example, you wanted to visit the vault, get something appraised, hang a picture, drop off a book at the library, sharpen a weapon, buy a rune, and then upgrade combat and magic skills, you have to do a full lap of the entire area, which is time consuming and made me feel like a horse. I wish a little more thought was given to the layout of Buddhahak. Another addition that makes this game unique to those that came before is the skill system. Each character starts with innate skills that can be leveled up using skill points earned from battle. In addition to skills that a character may start with, they can learn other skills from either a Bujutsu master or a magic tutor. Skills can improve a character's ability in battle, such as allowing them to attack multiple times in a round, block incoming damage, and even shorten the cast timer of runes. Some skills even have a practical use outside of battle, such as healing characters at the end of battle, or allowing you to apply runes to characters even in the absence of being in a store. Each character has an affinity to various kinds of skills, and a skill's proficiency can range from E rank to S rank. Skills become a vital part of being able to survive army battles later, especially when you have no control over your characters. But even for normal battles, sometimes skills can be invaluable to assisting you to obtain victory. Sometimes when exploring the terrain, you may accidentally stumble upon a large boss-like monster guarding a treasure chest. If you can best the foe in battle, you'll obtain all the trinkets within the box it was guarding. Some runes and equipment can only be obtained from these boxes, so it's very much worth going out of your way to find them. Once you have completely looted a chest, it will replenish its contents within about an hour of game time, with another boss ready to protect it. I found at the end of the game I was travelling between locations of these boxes so that I could stock up on good items and the best equipment for the final boss. The contents of the treasure boxes are random, but generally at least one of the items will be valuable on repeat visits, so it's worth investing time into. The leap to 3D brings richly detailed environments supporting a combination of 3D and 2D assets woven together to establish the scene. In Duck Village, for example, the 2D lily fronds integrate into the 3D background, as do the trees within the foreground of Zexen Forest, against multiple layers of 2D background images, and I liked how this assisted to establish the aesthetic. As the camera is fixed and cannot be controlled by the player, it meant that Konami only had to mold what the player would see, and carefully curate the environments to invoke the reaction they were looking to achieve. For example, in any of the fields, the skybox depicts a clear blue with fluffy clouds soaring across the horizon. Sometimes it was calming to just stop and observe the marvel of this. Character models, on the other hand, whilst unique and varied in their art, are a little more difficult to look at. I enjoyed that their faces were painted on, which meant that they could be emoted, but the proportions of their bodies looked a little strange and rigid to me. But I got used to it eventually. As always, Fumi Ishikawa's character portraits are beautiful to observe, and I enjoyed that some instances of them changed in critical scenes, adding gravitas to the situations they were presented in. Sadly, Suikoden III sees the departure of Miki Higashino as a composer, replaced by Michiru Yamane, Keiko Fukami, and Masahiko Kimura, which goes a long way in explaining not only the deviation of sound from previous titles, but also the variety to tracks. Suikoden III generally opts for a more ambient sound, with catchy tunes contained to locations that are inhabited, though sometimes even then these tracks are not vibrant. One of my gripes with the music is that Buddhahak Castle only has one track, which was a shame because I always enjoyed how the track changed as the home base grew in previous titles. However, locations where the cultures distinctly differ had a different sound which helped to highlight how unique and separate each tribe and peoples were from each other. Where the grassland territories typically tended to feature heavy percussion and woodwind instruments, Zexen favoured brass and string, aligning to their cultural sensibilities. Some locations, such as Vinay del Zexe, have layers of music weave in and out depending on how close to the cultural hub of the city you are, which I thought was a nice touch. My favourite track is the opening FMV track called Exceeding Love. The first time I heard this track, it made me excited for what was to come musically, and then I was a little disappointed when the rest of the tracks did not marry up to this calibre. Suikoden 3 will divide new players who come from the previous titles. Whilst the transition to 3D wasn't painful, other elements such as the Trinity Site System, the changes to the battle system, and the headquarters may have some scratching their head in confusion. Personally, I enjoyed the way the narrative was told, and am disappointed that this is the final game in the series, closest to the end of the timeline. Following this, the other mainline titles jump into the past, outlining other historical wars. If you are a fan of the Suikoden series, I would recommend enlisting with the Firebringers and helping to save the Grasslands, as you wouldn't want to witness another world-ending cataclysm, would you? By the way, with a large cast of characters, there's always bound to be someone who is your favourite. Who did you like the most from this vibrant cast of characters? Let me know in the comments. This has been Venoir with a review of Suikoden 3. If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe for more great JRPG content. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch my video. I really appreciate it. Take care of yourselves and bye bye for now.